Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Season 4, Episode 5, Part 5 of 5 review of Castlevania. The series finale is covered in this one. And wow, it sure has been a strange ride, to say the least. I'm joined today by Chris again. Hey, Chris.
What's up, guys?
And, we want to kind of break down Episode 9, Episode 10, get right into it. Pros and cons. Definitely, there's no way that any series is ever going to end in a way that is satisfying to every viewer. There's things that I really liked about these episodes. There's things that, I don't know, maybe I thought could have been executed better. I know you feel similarly, although probably about different things. Let's talk real quick about how we enter into these two. So, Episode 9, The Endings, it's called, very foreshadowing, starts off where we had left off with Trevor, Sypha finally being in Alucard's castle with him, backing him up when he's facing seemingly insurmountable odds, and then just a really cool series of action. I mean, really, they end now incorporating the new abilities and new weapons that we've seen the characters develop. The last time that I had you on this, you had mentioned that you wanted to see a new weapon for Belmont. And in this time, we have in the form of that little cross knife that
the crucifix dagger,
that he makes use of nonstop. In fact, I would say he uses that
sick.
more than his whip throughout these episodes.
Yeah, or
he's
used
like
it in conjunction with the
boomerang.
Morningstar whip. Yeah, it was really cool. It was cool to see him. Sypha had that new electrical power.
Yeah, so
she didn't really dish out.
A couple episodes ago, I think, right? She developed
you kind
the
of see her
electricity,
developing that.
And now it's fluid with everything else. We got to see her go wild with her fire, with her ice. It may very well be that she's the most powerful of the characters.
I think so, because you see Trevor is really creative with the way he uses his weapons. Mm-hmm. And then you see Alucard uses his just super ability mixed with that telekinesis of the sword, and now he started using his shape-shifting again because he turned himself into a wolf. Then he made some wings for himself out of the cape, which is kind of cool.
I had mentioned this in the last episode when you weren't here. I don't know if maybe you remember something that I missed. The spectral fire on his sword, is that new?
So I don't remember seeing it. I think that's a new thing.
I only remember seeing it just in the previous episode when he was defending the castle. That seems to be like his
I don't remember.
Power.
Yeah, I think that's just like a thing that he's kind of pushing out now. Mm-hmm. That was cool, and Sypha kind of backed it up to reinforce it when it cuts through the guy. But no, dude, episode 9 was just pure action.
Yes,
that was pure a guy's wet dream right there. Just non-stop action. Great, dude. Great detail. Great creativity in the fight scenes. The best, I have to say that the best is like you watch them kind of just flow into that chemistry of a true fight team right there.
Yes.
True teamwork. And that was like really cool to see because you don't really see that. They don't really do that in the first ones either.
No, I mean this is their last hurrah of the season.
Yes.
Right? This is where they all come together to fight. Obviously at the end of this episode, they had chosen to make the final boss, if you will, kind of an enemy mainly that Trevor faces. But the action scenes leading into the reveal of the true villain in death are amazingly animated, very well put together and choreographed, very, very cool. We get to see kind of the new powers, the old powers, and they went a little gratuitous with the battle scenes throughout this season in particular, but I was okay with it because that's what this show has been about. I mean, this show's always been about cool action scenes too. We have to remember that, even though you and I are not particularly connected to the original source material, the original source material is a video game and it's an action video game, so that they would incorporate all of these cool fight scenes fits really well into that dynamic and theme. But I want to get to kind of the main story beat with you on this. So we find out that Death is Varney is really Death, who is the Grim Reaper, but not the Grim Reaper. It's made expressively not clear on what Death is. He's an elemental spirit, but he's been around since the beginning of time, but he's not what you think of when you think of Death and the Grim Reaper, but he looks exactly like what you think of when he's Death and the Grim Reaper. Now, something that's cool is Death actually is a character in Symphony of the Night. He faces Alucard in the very opening scene and takes all of Alucard's weapons and abilities from him, where you, the player, have to start fresh with Alucard to gain everything back. So he's definitely is a character that they drew from the Castlevania series. He was a servant of Dracula in the Castlevania series here. And I do want to hear your opinion on him. I will kind of preface it with my own opinion. I thought that this was a random anime twist where they threw in a character that they had not introduced before. They're like, haha, he's the villain after all. You're kind of like, okay. Like it reminds me, the mind you, they made this character cool, so it's not a perfect allegory, but it reminds me of like Uchiha Madara in Naruto, where they barely talk about this character. You know, there's that brief scene in the show where Naruto and Sasuke fight on tops of the statues of the old Hokage and Madara. But like literally, they never talk about him. They never talk about him. They don't give you any info, and then all
until
of a sudden,
like the very, very end. Yeah,
they're like,
I agree with you.
Hey, he's the bad guy. And that was kind of it with Death. Technically, they did foreshadow him because in the very first episode of this season, there's a cult of humans that's sacrificing children that Sypha and Trevor interrupt in the very opening scenes when they do the 6 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, 4 weeks
yes,
ago.
I remember.
And they were sacrificing humans to a statue of the Grim Reaper. And they even had that brief conversation, like, so they believe in death? And they're like, yeah, but he's not what you think. And then they don't talk about it at all, and that turns to be the villain at the end here. So I understand the reference to the video game. I understand that there was a little bit of foreshadowing. For me, adding in the component of death did more harm than good. It was a little more confusing because on one hand, he's like, oh, I could never do the destruction that Dracula could. That's why I want Dracula. But then he turns into like a kaiju at the end, pretty much, where he's enormous and he's destroying the ground with like
he's demolishing the castle, dude. He's cutting it in half.
Exactly. He's so powerful that you're like, I don't even think Dracula was this strong. What are you talking about that you need Dracula? You pretty much destroy everything if you want. But once again, I think I'm diving a little too deep. They wanted to just add a villain, I think, that was from the game that was cool, and he definitely looked cool, and the fight scene was cool.
So I thought, dude, the artistry of him, he looked sick. Like how they made the skull kind of like a crown, and I thought he looked really, really cool. Varney turning into him, I'm okay with. You know, it is that very Japanese anime twist. Like all of a sudden, the one we never talked about is your main villain. All
this
along,
is the twist.
All along, this is the twist. But you know, I just thought it was cool because it kind of gave Varney a purpose. Like Varney didn't really have a purpose throughout the entire show. He was going to raise Dracula as one of his servants, but like he had no purpose. So kind of gave him a purpose. On top of like the whole like he needs Dracula back to create all this mayhem so he can feed on all this death. I'm like, bro, you literally just destroyed half the castle with a scythe swipe. You could pretty much do it yourself.
Yep.
but I think it's that he was being fed by all the destruction that was happening. So I think that's what the premise is, that, you know, without Dracula creating more destruction, he's just going to start deteriorating again.
Yeah, I think so.
So he needs that constant feed. So, and then Saint Germain gave him that constant feed by letting all those people die in the castle. So he needed that castle. Cool character, very cool artistry. I love the way he was illustrated out. Thought it looked sick as hell. Thought that battle at the end was a true video game boss battle, right? You and your companions, like if you're playing in one-player mode, you and your companions go up. Your AI helps you freaking fight this guy. All of a sudden, when it's really time to beat him, they're nowhere to be found, and you got to find him by yourself. You're like, oh, great. But I thought it was cool, dude. I really, really enjoyed episode 9 a lot. Dude, the teamwork was great that you see them fighting in. When they're fighting against like all those, what was it, like 5 or 6 henchmen.
Oh,
when they're getting up to the top, dude, it's like that freaking.
Dude,
it's like going to the boss level.
I
dude. It's
totally
like going to the
looked
boss
past
level.
that. You're right. They had a really cool team of, I think they were
They
vampires,
had to
but like
be. I
sorcerer,
don't know if they were
necromancer vampires.
Yeah,
They were
they were
really cool.
weird.
Yeah, really cool. In fact, you know what? Seeing that team, I was like, oh, this should have been the villains. Like,
Yeah.
forget Carmilla, and I liked Carmilla in season 3 and whatnot, but they could have spent more time on these characters and built them up because they were
Well, I don't
awesome.
even know who that old the guy was. That general was just out of nowhere to me.
I mean, they were all out of nowhere, but they were cool. They were very cool
Yeah, they were
designs.
super cool. Or if they could have been like, you know what, these are like kind of like how Isaac had his little guard of
Mm-hmm.
creatures of the night. Same thing, right? Like so but that was just like one of the coolest fight scenes, dude. It was
Yes.
really well like it was really like, listen, dude, if we work together, we can probably take them down. And the moment they started working and like, helping each other out, they took them down with ease, which is pretty freaking cool.
I
So
agree. I
I
agree.
thought that
I
was really
like
sick.
that. I think overall the execution of episode 9 was very well done. The amount of time that they spent focusing on each character, the amount of action that they showed, nothing. It was all diverse enough that it held your interest. It wasn't.
Yeah.
They didn't cheap out on the animation. They didn't, reuse any animation. Everything was custom to these specific scenes. That was all. That was all very cool.
The
And then,
the only fight that didn't happen that I kind of wish happened would be Striga versus Alucard. Big nightmare
oh
sword
yeah,
versus the rapier, dude.
yeah,
I
we
thought that would have
we
been great.
we
Shoot,
didn't end
they
up
just say
seeing any
they're
more of
going
her.
west, so and then you let them go west and they're gone.
Yeah.
So we've never seen them again. And I was kind of a little disappointed. I was like, oh, dude, they're gonna come back. Whose side are they gonna fight on? Dude, that's gonna be a bad fight. Like that's gonna be an awesome fight.
Hmm.
And it never happens.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I mean, it was funny because I wasn't really connected to her as a character until that episode earlier
Until
this
that episode
season.
where you see her just
And
demolish
then I
people with
wanted to
that
see
sword.
more, of course. But yeah, I get it. They only have 10 episodes. They wanted to really focus on the main characters. They did give us things that I didn't think we would get. I didn't think we would get as clean of an ending to Isaac's story or Hector's story, and they did do that very well. Carmilla's
Yes.
story,
They concluded
Lenore,
everybody's story
yeah.
was concluded.
Yeah, all of
So
that was really nice. So going into the final battle, they did something that we kind of predicted, which is the death of Trevor and Sypha's pregnant. And I'm not going to
yes.
beat around the bush. Kind of predicted. We guessed spot on. This was what was
Yeah,
going to
we
happen.
knew that was
Boom, it
gonna
happened.
happen.
Kinda though. So,
Yeah, so I know
um,
how you feel. I'm not a big fan of episode 10. And again, we talked about this, that very Japanese anime where no one really dies
mhm.
and it's always a happy ending. But I just, he names the village after Belmont, but then Belmont returns, right? I was like, dude, then that's the whole, you waste the point of naming the village.
Well, so yes, there was definitely some hangups. Like, oh, the scenes where okay, it's been 2 weeks. Sypha's been mourning, but now she's on a really
Yeah.
good spot. They had a very meaningful conversation between her and Alucard and Greta, and it looks like this is the home they're gonna found. They're gonna raise Belmont's son to be the next Belmont. There's a good community. Things have turned around for Alucard, and they're gonna honor Trevor's sacrifice by naming the city after him. Yay! And then they bring Trevor back, and you're right. There does leave that question of like, does Alucard go like, never mind. I guess we'll just call it Castle Dracula, or does
Yeah.
he go like, no, we'll still call it Belmont, or what? I don't know. I don't hate it just because. Uh, don't get me wrong. There is something special in a series with a powerful ending that has high costs to the characters. Game of Thrones. Well, I didn't like the actual ending of Game of Thrones. Seasons had individually very
Oh,
powerful
individual
endings.
great endings. Yeah.
Like the Red Wedding, of course, is the massive one, but also like the spoilers for Game of Thrones, death of Jon Snow,
Death of
things
Jon
like
Snow.
that.
Death of Jon Snow. Death of Ned
Right.
Stark, dude. Like,
Yeah, very powerful. And I would say that even in the realm of animation, there are series that do endings very well. So like, I don't know if you ever saw this one, but for example, Death Note
yes.
ends with
Death Note does it.
Kira dying in the first season. And then of course they bring a second season that leads all the way to Elle dying, which was kind of pointless. But if they had ended on just that first one, would have had
It
a
would have
very
been good.
powerful moving ending. But you're right, they kind of stick to the traditional, hey, we're going to end this with everybody happy. And I don't hate it because I like those two. Like,
I think
I
it's got in
get it.
place, but I don't think it was here.
It definitely cheapens everything that happened with Trevor beforehand. I mean, there's no getting around the bush with that. It cheapens the whole sacrifice and everything, that he just comes back to life and he's fine. Everybody lives happily ever after. But when you're particularly connected to a story, those happy endings are, they're kind of cool. Like another animated series with one is the is what's it called? Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like, it
Yes.
ends with a happy ending where throughout the final season, the main character is deciding whether or not he's going to take a life, which is against his pacifist nature, and he ends up finding a way around it. So there's no real cost to him at the end. He just succeeds, and then they all experience victory together. And that's kind of what this ending was. I don't hate it. There's a place for it. It's not what I saw coming. I mean, the way that they build into episode 9, it made it like that was the finale. That was powerful. That was awesome. And then they seemingly built up to what would have been a suitable ending for the rest of the characters too, had they just not brought him back. And then they elected to bring him back. But at least they didn't stretch that out. When they did bring him back, you see the happiness of Sypha, the relief on Alucard, and then it ends. That's it. They're just like, okay, cool. And he's here now. Yay. And then it brings up Dracula and his wife, who are resurrected, which is another weird thing, because definitely this sets up for a sequel. Definitely. There's not really much of a point to this other than setting up for a sequel series. If they wanted to give just a suitable redeeming ending to Dracula and his wife Lisa, they could have just shown them like in heaven, because they were both in hell beforehand. They got resurrected into that homunculus creature, and then apparently resurrected with their own bodies somehow.
With their own bodies, yeah. Well, it shows like they're being redeemed because she's calling him Vlad instead of Dracula. He's like, look, you got used to being called Vlad.
And they're
moving far away
living
now,
as a couple.
And they're trying to, they're like, listen, let's restart our lives.
Which is cool, but it adds a new factor into the universe that we are left wondering about when the rest of the story was wrapped up pretty neatly. So that's kind of what leads me to believe, like, okay, they've definitely given themselves an out for a sequel series if they want to. I don't know that they will, but I don't
think they're going to.
You're right. I don't think so, but we'll see.
Best supporting role, that horse. Best supporting role is that horse is always in the perfect place at the right time, dude. Always. I thought it was so fun. I'm like, dude, it's that horse again, man. It's that horse. He just knows where to be and when to be there.
Hey, so we did get to see a new ability by Alucard. Angel wings.
Well, I think that was just the metamorphosis that he can do, the body shifting.
I guess I always thought that he could only turn into the wolf or into bats, but
I don't know. I assume because it was his cape turned into wings. So I don't know. I thought it was cool. I was like, that's sick. I don't remember that happening in the game, so
no, I don't either. This series was very satisfying. I'm a big fan of this series. I would definitely recommend it to somebody that's not checked it out yet and is interested in similar type of, material. Like my wife asked me if she should watch this. I was like, oh, no. I mean, you don't really watch
like it, but
you don't really watch animated shows nor anime nor action shows. She's much more of like a,
Gilmore Girls,
Hallmark Speed.
Oh yeah,
type of girl.
Totally.
Nah, this is definitely not your show. But to somebody else that has similar interests, that likes comic books or video games or any sort of, like, I would even just say any general sci-fi fantasy genre type stuff. Even the fact that this is animated does not detract from it. I enjoyed.
Well, I think that adds more to it because it pushes the limits of what they can and can't do in terms of the creative action side.
I would agree.
Like there was things like we both have watched The Witcher, for spoiler alerts for anybody who haven't seen The Witchers. That was they did some great action in The Witcher, but if it was like this, it'd be amazing because there's just supernatural things that you can't do with human bodies.
Yeah, and that
and the budget. The budget for
Yes.
CGI versus the budget for
the
anime.
the
So
budget, and there is that kind of, uncanny valley effect still with special effects, where when it takes place in a live action film, you're kind of like, yeah, but that doesn't look really
yeah, it
real.
doesn't look real. It looks kind
Yeah.
of corny. But when
And
it's all
when it's
animated or
animated,
all
it's,
CGI, it's cool.
yes, I agree.
It's
And
believable.
we've seen already with just the last show that we reviewed, animated and adult don't have to be separate. I mean,
Oh no, not at all.
Invincible was prime example, and this is a great example too. Because this was
Yeah, dude.
gory, dude. I mean,
It was
cutting
super
people
gory.
in
Dude. Everybody's
half
getting
and
cut up, decapitated, blood's
yeah,
everywhere. People are getting bit, like heads ripped
yep.
off, bodies torn apart. Dude, yeah, it's super gory. But I again, other than episode 10, and I like how they did, like they concluded that Lenore chose to kill herself,
Mm-hmm.
right? Isaac's, he kind of resolved himself around like what, episode 7 or 8?
It was. I think it was episode 6.
6, where his story was over with.
Mm-hmm.
And then Hector said, I'm gonna write a book. Like his story's over with
Yeah.
now. So you get everybody's now done.
Yeah,
kind of
and
cool.
you kind of get the sense.
You don't wonder
also,
about anybody.
No, exactly. All the main characters, we have a resolution, and it's possible even that the Dracula resolution was just meant to be that. They were just like, hey, you know what? While we're giving out happy endings to everybody, here's Dracula and Lisa. They're both back alive. They're gonna get a chance to live a happy, uninterrupted life in England somewhere. There you go. And that was the end.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think that's what it is. Honestly, I think they're just trying to give everybody the happily ever after. It would have been cool if they did like, I don't know, like 1 or 2 years later, and you see the little baby. That would have been kind of cool.
Yeah,
And
something.
just seeing the full development, full flourishing. Like we know that Greta and Alucard become a love interest. We know they became a thing.
Oh yeah, that was clear just in this episode. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So no, honestly it was good. If I'd rate this honestly an 8.2 out of 10.
Yeah, I'd go with a
overall.
solid 8 for the 4th season. It's definitely above average. Some of the choices they made didn't blow my socks off completely when it did have the potential to do so, but I can't say that I'm unhappy with it. I don't really have any complaints specifically.
Well, since we did everything in 2 episode increments, you notice like the first episode was slow, second one was action packed, and it was always like that. This one had the flip flop, right? The first episode we watched was action packed, so now it was action packed, and 10 was really slow and kind of dying it down.
Yes. It's just, I think with this season overall, the major hangups are the storylines that were unnecessary because they detracted from what could have been further character development, or of even characters that, maybe weren't so important but were already established. Like I had mentioned this in my last review, but the addition of Zamfir was kind of pointless altogether because, okay, she's crazy, but okay, she sacrificed herself for a good cause. And then why did we spend all this time learning about the underground court?
I think the only point was to find that weapon. The only point was to find the weapon. That's where he finds the weapon. That's
because
it. That is it.
On top of that, we find out that Varney's actually deaf. Did he even need to go through the freaking, mirror to get to Dracula's castle? Because all the other vampires that were attacking the castle worked for him and in coordination with Saint Germain. So he could have just been with them too. So yeah, you're right. It was probably just a way for them to be like, hey, we're gonna do this other storyline, and these characters are gonna get their new weapon and new powers or whatever over here on this, and then we're just gonna make them kind of add in at the end. But the amount of time that they spent on that storyline is kind of what took time from us seeing, more of Striga, for example, or more of some of these other characters that may have been interesting to see too. So,
so
that was kind of a miss for me with the Zamfir Targovishta storyline. But aside from that, I liked it.
Storyline too. I agree with you. I thought that was a wasted storyline. I knew it was only to get the crucifix dagger that he used. But other than that, like, she was just crazy and she deserved to die. She was psychotic. I was like, dude, you're literally praying to freaking dead corpses that probably smell horrible.
Her story wrapped up very neatly. Where
she had to die. They had to kill her off.
They introduced the crazy element, but then
she was gone.
they wrapped it up immediately. We're like, okay, but she's come to her senses and now she's going to do the right thing to sacrifice herself for these innocent people.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you're
no,
like,
it's
really? In
just
the last
whatever.
15 minutes? Because that's all the amount of time that's passed since we saw that she was crazy. All right, whatever.
Yeah, but I was like, I don't really care about her. I hope she goes anyway. She's not important.
But aside from
Because
that, I liked it. I thought that the series overall did well. So I agree with your rating. I'd be right around there, maybe a little lower, maybe just like flat 8,
yeah,
rookie score. But
rookie score, rookie score.
but yeah, I'm happy with it there.
Yeah. No, it was great. I would definitely recommend it again. People who have the same kind of interest, like if you like Lord of the Rings or you like horror, you'll probably like this. It's got a lot of action packed. Or if
Yes.
you like the anime, those are who you're really gonna aim this series to because
Yeah,
it's got that.
somewhere in that sort of range. But yeah, this this was definitely a fun series to review. We got a couple options ahead of us on what's next. I'm gonna take a look at the calendar on what's coming out. For our other review series, we're still doing Star Wars: The Bad Batch, and we're gonna do that leading all the way into Loki, and then start with Loki. And for this series, for Dweeb reviews, we'll see. I'm still making the decision, but there is the final episodes of Lucifer come out this Friday, which I like, even though it's kind of a network TV show esque
Yeah,
show.
it's still a good show. I like it
Still,
too.
still pretty good. So we might go that route, but we'll see. Anyways, guys, thank you for tuning in. Thank you again, Chris, for joining me for this. And Castlevania gets thumbs up. Thumbs up. Like, yeah, like that far. There you go. Like a thumb and like 3/4 of a thumb up.
Yeah, no problem. It was awesome. Have fun, guys. Later.
Later.